Welcome to Living in Connection, where we explore the nature of physical and non-physical reality and what that means in your life.
Hello and welcome. I'm Dirk Dunning, here with Frank Demarco in an ongoing series of discussions about all things related to the world beyond and lots of other interesting things. Our topic today is going to be about guidance.
At least we think so.
At least we think so. There's always that. Frank, do you want to lead us off?
Well, it's interesting what you just said, because I would say things about the world within, which is really the same thing, but people don't always think of it that way.
Indeed.
All of the stuff that we're talking about in this whole series has followed from a series of conversations that I had starting about 25 years ago with non-physical energies, non-physical beings that we don't even bother mostly to identify. I just call them the guys upstairs, or sometimes the gentleman upstairs. But that is really the essence of what we're going to talk about today, if we happen to stick to the topic, which has happened. And that
We've never strayed before.
Never.
Well, at least not in the last 10 minutes.
Not yet. Anyway. The premise is that we are one being in two different turfs. There is the 3D component, which is the us we usually recognize, which is being carried through space moment by moment by moment, and cannot go to last Tuesday and cannot go to next Tuesday until next Tuesday shows up. Then there is the non-physical component, the non-3D area of ourselves, which is not bound by time constraints and is not frog marched through time the way we are, has a wider view and a different view. When we are in good communication with our non-3D self, I think that's a major component of what we call guidance. It is a part of ourself looking from a higher perspective and saying, well, you may not want to keep walking that way because you're walking into a swamp, because it can see what we cannot see. How's that for an opener?
That's a good one. I think where I would start us off is that people have an idea about what guidance is, but I'd like to suggest that guidance comes in many, many different forms. And it comes from many different sources. Guidance can be your own internal compass. It can come from your deep inner self here in the physical. It can come from your higher self. It can come from other people in your lives who've passed on. It can come from all kinds of other places. The more I've gone on and working with guidance, the more I've recognized there was always more there than I realized.
And it can appear in so many ways. Not only dreams and ideas and sudden flashes, but a coincidence, so-called, in the external world, or someone happening to say something, they may not even know why. But for you, it's a major aha.
Well, in some examples from my life, I had a lot of times that guidance has intervened for me throughout my life. And one of those has to do with a thing that my friends can relate to of something I've told them about, is a thing that my father had called magic screwdriver, where for whatever reason, things around my father always just worked. Broken things mended themselves, things that were needed appeared, all kinds of things. And somehow I inherited that or adopted it or was given it. I'm not sure how it works or what that is. And I've never known what the origin of magic screwdriver is in my life. But then much later, when my sister passed away, she died quite young at age 26. Her theme in her life and a lot of her poetry and other things was rainbows. And after she passed, I had many times where I would be distraught about her passing and about everything else. And My thoughts would go to her, and immediately a rainbow would appear, either on the side of a fan, a rainbow in the sky, a rainbow cast by a CD hanging in a window or a crystal. But they always happened exactly as it happened. And like the van that had the rainbow painted on the side had a slogan on it, which answered the very question that I had.
Slogan was?
I don't remember now, but it was basically it's basically that everything's going to work out.
You know, as you say that about your father and yourself, it occurs to me, it's only a guess, but it comes to me, it seems like at a very deep level, you both connected to a sense of optimism and a sense of things are going to be all right, despite whatever horrendous things may have happened to you or around you. Somebody inside there still says, no, everything will be fine. And as a result, you're still alive, for one thing, after your career.
Well, when I was young, I considered myself to be an optimistic pessimist. It's going to break, but we can fix it. And then later, I considered myself an optimistic realist. But yeah, the optimism is there, but it's not born of believing things will work out for just no reason, but believing that we can overcome and we can make them work, which is slightly different.
It is slightly different, and I think mine is more different than that. I think, again, without data, but I think at a very deep level, you have decided I am not going anywhere where things are unfixable. Now, I don't know if that really is guidance or not, but it's what comes to me when you talk about your father's and your magic screwdriver. You didn't tell people, but where you used to be at work and people would ask you to come around to visit, and you'd go away wondering, why did they want me then? And something would have been fixed by your presence, which shows you that wasn't just your idea.
That was my time as a manager at Fairchild in the 1980s, where I'm in senior management, and people from all over the company, almost 1,000 folks worked there. They would call me for no apparent reason and ask me to stop by, and I'd stop by figuring that there was something they needed, and lo and behold, they just wanted to chit chat. Didn't make any sense. And then I'd leave, and I didn't know what that was about, if I was just particularly liked or what it was. It didn't really make a lot of sense, but I wandered all over the company all the time. It wasn't until a couple of years after the company was sold off that I was having lunch with a girlfriend who had also worked there during those years. And we were talking about, reminiscing about the company, and she commented that, something, and it surprised me. I said, what? She says, you didn't know. Know what? You really didn't know. And so then she told me the whole story about how it had everybody kind of freaked out in the company, but they knew that if software or hardware broke and they couldn't fix it, all they had to do was, when they finally got to wit's end, have me come by and it would just work.
Now, are we really talking about guidance, or are we talking about presence in the world? And I mean,
with Magic Screwdriver, it comes both as guidance, where I will get information, but it also comes with direct intervention. And I don't know what to call that, whether it's guidance or whether it's something else. I tend to think of guidance as being the information aspect, not the other aspects.
Yeah, but if you're lost in the wilderness and a guide comes to you, he doesn't just tell you the way out, but he shows you the way out, and he had to hike there in the first place. So maybe it is. What about people who are persistently surrounded by bad luck? And it seems like it's not their clumsiness or their carelessness or their fault, but it is, if it's going to fall, it's going to fall on them.
Well, I don't think this is guidance, but I met a gal in my gateway who had that it wasn't that she believed things would go bad. It's just that technological things broke around her.
Oh, no, that's another thing, though, I think.
I think it is.
Yeah, keep going.
But the funny thing is when I left the program, I didn't turn on my computer for about 3 days when I got home. And when I finally turned it on, it screamed and smoke came out of both the computer and the monitor. The computer was fried. It was destroyed. Over the next decade, I destroyed 10 computers thinking at them. It was a very expensive habit.
I was much more frugal. I kept frying watches after I came out of, I think it was guidelines. Every electronic watch, and every so often, it would just stop, and that would be it. And we both know I don't think either of us could describe the mechanism, but there's clearly a connection between the radiance, how should we call it, the radiation that we're giving off, or the level that we're living at, and the electronic interference. You would think if you had come to a place that was better and you were more together, that you were more living closer to the life you should lead, you would think that would be a good thing, right? But apparently, if you're an electronic watch, it's not necessarily a good thing. It's, oh my God, turn that thing down, will you please?
Well, and lots of people coming out of Monroe and other experiences have the experience of light bulbs going out and coming back on as they go past them, or going out and blowing up.
I actually had that once. They didn't blow up, but it went out when I went under it, and it kind of hurt my feelings. This is something I said.
Yeah. Well,
Never did figure out what it meant.
So going back to the beginning, you commented, that if we can stay on topic. So we've kind of wandered afield, but I don't really think we have, because I think one of the points about thinking about guidance is there aren't necessarily clear, bright lines that say, this is guidance, this is something else.
Yes, right.
That these, they vary across a broad spectrum. But if we return to the central part of guidance, we also get other things that happen where I was telling you before we started that I had a dream this morning, and I won't go into the details, but it had two messages for me. One dealing potentially with healing, and I'm going to have to be following up on that to see what it means. And another potentially on some other message that I don't understand its meaning yet, but it had to do with a dear, dear friend of mine that passed away a dozen years ago that I don't often encounter anymore. But she was clearly here, clearly present in her bubbly self, and she was anxious to share a couple of messages with me. And so I'm going to be very interested to see where those go and what they're about.
Well, as you began talking, it occurred to me, perhaps we should make it clear that there's never, in my experience anyway, there's not a clear distinction between guidance and non-guidance, and it doesn't come in a prescribed form. It doesn't come with bells and whistles. It doesn't come, both wrapped with a bow tie. You look with a bow or a bow tie. You can look at your life. Somebody said that nothing is magic, or you could look at it as everything is magic, and either way is true. It depends on you, really. It's not a judgment of the universe.
Well, and it can also come, like you say, it can come in many forms. So another example, I was attending a program at the Monroe Institute, and one of the exercises had to do with getting messages for other people, which it's all about guidance. And in this case, I was paired with a dear friend of mine, and she had 3 questions, and one of them in particular, I had an absolutely clear image of this table with a cloth draped off of it and a tiger on it with a letter on the background behind the tiger, and the tiger jumping off the platform to the right. I have no idea what the message was, but I gave that to her, and it turned out she felt it directly applied to her question, and she understood it perfectly. In that case, it was guidance coming through with a message, not for me, but for me to share with someone else.
Yeah, through you rather than for you. It occurs to me, we haven't said the elephant in the living room, really, which is as you learn to rely on the fact that guidance is there and guidance is willing to help you if you're willing to listen, your whole life becomes a lot easier. Rather than feeling like you're playing over your head, or you're in deep water and you don't know how to swim. Instead, It becomes more like, I've always got somebody on my side looking out for me. And of course, it's yourself in one way of looking at it, but that doesn't matter.
Well, in my experience, many times it is an aspect of, or some aspect of myself, here or broader. But in other cases, it's aspects of other people that I've known. And in some cases of energy beings that have never lived, or at least not recently.
Yeah, but as you know, the problem then is which you, because we don't know how far we do extend.
Exactly.
You may be part of that energy being which seems alien to you. And of course, your 3D self doesn't know, because we don't have the way to see it. But I do think it's very, I mean, my own experience of it has been very affirming to then for the first time think, it's like It's like you've got an authority you can always trust, even though you can't necessarily trust everything it says because it could be wrong, as you could be wrong. But it's always on your side, at least. And I think that's huge.
So, for folks who either don't have guidance often speaking with or to them, or that don't know how to do this, what would you suggest as the first steps to get there?
That's an excellent question. Um, well, I think the absolute sine qua non is you cannot be closed to the idea and open to it as well. If you have an internal skeptic that says this can't be done, you're going to have to tell that skeptic either hold off and let's see, or shut up and go away, or it has to give you the space to actually experience it. It doesn't make any sense at all to try to judge before you've had the perception. To say, well, according to everything I know, this is not possible. Therefore, I don't have to bother to explore it. Well, yeah, that's wonderful, but that's not going to get you in any contact with guidance, and it doesn't mean guidance won't be there. Guidance is there, sitting on the other side of the veil, tapping its fingers and going, I hope you wake up soon. So,
and even in the cases where it might be your deep subconscious, the message burbling into your consciousness may well be just another aspect of the local you that's paying attention to things you're not consciously being aware of.
That's a sidebar, but a good one. I think we ought to emphasize it doesn't make any difference how you conceptualize things or whether you can even put them in the right categories. I've given up all of that because I can't really know. And in practice, in practical terms, it doesn't make any difference. If it's the guys upstairs, if it's the Archangel Gabriel, if it's the dog next door, if it's my subconscious robots, it doesn't matter. What I know is what I experience. Then I've got to decide, okay, what does that mean? Can this be relied on? Is it sensible? Whatever. But I'm never going to know where it came from, and I don't need to. But so you asked the question, what? And I think the first thing is be sure that you don't have some preconception that it can't be done. If you do, say, we're going to suspend that long enough to actually investigate. Once we investigate, if we find out that it's not true, we haven't lost anything. But if we find out that it is true, we've gained a heck of a lot. So then, Dirk, what would you propose as the first thing for people to do once they've made sure that's so? Once they made sure they're open to it?
Well, the next part, I think, is the other side of it, of not immediately then jumping to following every such guidance input blindly as if it is absolutely true.
Oh, yeah.
Because you may be, hearing your own mind chatter that's not leading you in a good direction, but, test everything and verify it, but hold out the possibility that this is meaningful information that may help you.
And hold out the possibility it may be meaningful information that I am misinterpreting, and I may need to look at it a little more. I used to tell people, if you're getting guidance and your guidance says, take everything you own, sell it, and put it all on baby shoes in the 7th of Hialeah, are you going to do it?
No.
I mean, you'd be crazy. But we either know or we think we know of people who are total flakes, who will, thinking that they are living in spirit or thinking they're living in guidance, they will sort of deify any impulse and follow it without thinking it. And in the Bible, they're talking about this, but they say test the spirits. Don't accept everything you get. All right. So then how far have we gotten? A, don't presume that it can't be done or you can't do anything. B, don't presume that anything you happen to get is gospel. But that doesn't yet tell them how to do it.
I'd go the next step of, so I have a lot of folks who work on doing remote viewing and learning how to do it. And one of the great difficulties in learning any skill like that is learning how to temporarily either keep your conscious mind busy or set it aside, so give it some busy work task to do, and then to go deeper to focus on paying attention to all of your senses, all the physical senses first, sight, sound, taste, touch, etc., to see what's coming in. And don't necessarily think that what's coming in on each channel is that. So as an example, if I'm doing esoteric energy work, I feel colors flowing in someone else. None of that makes any sense logically. But because I know it's a feeling of a color flowing, I know what it is, and I know it's not actually coming through those senses, but that's where my mind is putting it.
It's your interpretation system.
Right.
Doesn't make it less true.
But then also along with that comes things that are simple knowings, where sometimes it's a gut feel or something, you know something to be true, and you cannot put your finger on why you know it to be true.
Mm-hmm.
Now, that may be your subconscious is busy analyzing in the background and it's providing you information. It could be a lot of different things, but you may not be able to sort those out immediately.
Well, I don't even know if it's necessary to do that. You be aware that it's there and then taste it, test it out, try it, you know. I don't mean do whatever it says to do. I mean, try and decide for yourself, is this a valid bit of input or not? If I got this message from a close friend that I trusted, would the message still seem the same as it does now?
Right. There's another aspect too of being careful about language. The subconscious in particular doesn't think in the same way as the conscious mind. It doesn't parse using word structure the way the conscious mind works. And so things like negation don't work for it. And so sometimes you'll get guidance and you can get a hint about where it's coming from or what it means, because if it has negation in it, it's not coming from your subconscious, because the subconscious doesn't know how to use that. And likewise, if you try to, use affirmations and things, if you put negation in it, it's likely to be self-defeating because your subconscious is going to hear the opposite of what you intend.
What you're calling the subconscious, I think, is what I would call robots.
Yeah, pretty much.
Beneath the level of our consciousness that
right.
Until we bring them conscious, we have no control over. I just want to.
For one form of guidance, if it's coming in from the subconscious, that's kind of a hint about whether or not it is or isn't the subconscious. There are other things, too, that may give you a hint. Like in the case of my sister, her symbol was rainbows. When my brother passed away, I tried to be there, and I because of work, I couldn't. I did get out as quickly as I could, but I was stuck. Anyway, I drove to Florence, and as I'm driving into town, for the first time ever in Florence, Oregon, I was bombarded with Redwing Blackbirds. Now, I remember seeing Redwing Blackbirds as a kid over in eastern Washington, but I've never seen them in the Willamette Valley, and I'd never seen them on the Oregon coast. And yet suddenly I've got like 100 Redwing Blackbirds everywhere.
And he liked them particularly?
He did, and he had just passed.
Yeah.
It was him saying goodbye. That was clear. Likewise, I've had other people that have a particular symbol. With my cousin, another cousin, I'll leave out her name, but she passed away quite young. And when she passed away and we went to her funeral, there was a casket burial. And my dad and I were both incredibly struck because there was this hawk circling overhead, until the preacher finished his last comment and the hawk broke formation and flew to the setting sun.
As you're saying that, I'm realizing that you and I are taking for granted, at least in these comments, something that may not be true at all. We're treating the subject as if guidance is something that is exterior that comes to us. And actually, I think a lot of times it's interior that becomes conscious wherever it came from. And it may be, it goes back to the same situation. You can't define where it came from, and it doesn't matter.
So I'll offer another one too. And this one, I think you'll appreciate that in doing a lot of the things I've done in my life, I've had people with a lot of different traditions involved and present and working together. And one of the things that surprised me a little bit was when Catholic angels showed up. It's like, okay, so we're working with Catholic angels today.
How did you know the angels were Catholic?
They were associated with a person who was very much Catholic, and all the symbology was Catholic.
You realize, though, that angels as Christian is not only Catholic.
I know, but these were specifically Catholic in this case.
Okay.
But then another friend who was involved, he particularly had this thing about little gray aliens, and a little gray alien showed up. It's like,
sure. Again, language, translation.
Right.
We have only a few minutes. What have we told them what they need to know to begin?
Have we?
Let's ask your guys and my guys, actually.
Go for it.
Well, we have insofar as they recognize that receptivity is the beginning and the end. If you're receptive, that doesn't mean wait for it in a certain order. It means be awake and alert to your whole life and see whether it's a coincidence, whether it's something that is blackbirds that shouldn't have been able to be seen, whether it's a stray thought that comes to you, whether it's an emotion you feel, whether you turn on the radio and it just happens to play a song that encapsulates exactly where you are. All of those things, that's all forms of guidance. And if you are, you can either be awake or not. And if you're not awake, you're not awake. You have to be awake in order. That may be too flat though. But more or less, I would say you have to be awake in order to actually perceive guidance and take advantage of it. And what about your guys?
What they're telling me is that, I'll just let this go. For folks who are new to guidance or who have not felt like they've experienced guidance, recognize that many times the guidance, either from internal to yourself or from external to you, is trying to benefit you. And so for people who have not routinely paid attention to guidance, one way to know that it is there is by repeated messages that essentially say the same thing. Where, say, you're driving around town and a particular symbol comes up 3 or 4 or 5 times that you normally don't see.
Yeah.
For some reason, unicorns are suddenly everywhere, and then they're not. And there may be something about that message that will relate in your life. Pay attention to those synchronicities because they're meaningful.
You know something else that we didn't say because it's almost too obvious. It's not predictable who will or won't be able to be in contact with their guidance, but everybody has guidance.
Yes.
And it's not something confined to a few special individuals. It's there. And there's another aspect of it too. Some people get guidance through their traditional methods. Maybe they get it through the church. Maybe they get it through, maybe they're members of Science of Mind or something. And all of those things come and it funnels through that. Nothing wrong with it. There's no rules to this. But nobody is an orphan in the universe as far as we can tell.
And to the best of my knowledge, there is no tradition of belief or religion that excludes this from being a part of the world.
I've never heard of one.
They may channel it in various ways, like you say, that it may come through scripture or it may come through, various things in nature or however it happens for the person. And so I would suggest for folks that not be a barrier for you, that find it within your own beliefs and traditions.
Well, if that, find it from wherever it's comfortable. Maybe your own traditions are not seemingly that way.
True.
But we'll see. Well, I think we more or less stuck to the point, Dirk.
It's a good intro. We'll have to do this again.
The discipline of having to do it in a half an hour, I think, did help a little bit.
Cool.
And so I'm willing to do another one at the same length.
Excellent. Well, thank you again. It was a very interesting chat.
Thank you for hosting it, as usual.
Until next time.
Okay.
If you enjoyed this episode, please press like. Please press subscribe to stay informed of new episodes as they appear. We would love to hear from you in the comments section below, and we wish you the very best in connecting with your own guidance.